While Capitol Hill focused on the impeachment hearings last week, there was another scandal over at the State Department. Senior Trump administration official Mina Chang resigned from her job after an NBC News investigation revealed that she'd made false claims about her qualifications. NBC's Dan Luce has the backstory on how she got that job in the first place.
Well, Mina Chang made it as far as she did by creating a public image and using PR consultants, a very slick website. And then she had some key connections in the administration and also on Capitol Hill. And that included a staffer for Republican Congressman Mike McCall of Dallas, who then ended up having the congressman write a letter of recommendation for a job at the State Department. And he gave her, quote, the strongest recommendation. But when we went to McCall's office, they say they have a different view now. And the congressman said that she was not entirely forthcoming about her background and so forth, and that she needed to face the consequences of her actions. And of course, she resigned after the first NBC News report we did that showed she had misstated or overstated her resume and overstated the work of her NGO. And this latest report also showed that people who did work for her, even interns for a very small NGO of maybe only one paid staff member, were asked to sign non-disclosure agreements so they wouldn't talk about the work at the NGO. And that was unusual, and we flagged that as well in the story. I think it's also the wider issue here is screening and the selection of people who work for this administration. And lawmakers in Congress are saying that this case of Mina Chang is representative of a wider problem where the administration doesn't seem to be carefully screening and selecting all the people that they appoint or nominate, and that a number of nominations have been withdrawn. And it's important to remember that Mina Chang was nominated for an even more senior, more responsible job at USAID to manage a $1 billion plus budget. And that nomination was withdrawn in September without public explanation. But we've since learned that Senate staffers were beginning to ask questions before that nomination was withdrawn.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.